Hi, everybody, and welcome to another Sunday Talk within the Nine-Sided Circle. It is November 15th, and we have an interesting topic tonight. But let us introduce ourselves first and get some, YouTuber type things out of the way. So I am one of your hosts, Nora Kyle, along with
the other one of your hosts, Mushtaq Ali.
Yes. Would you like to do our little spiel?
All right. Hang on to your hats, folks. It's time for me to spiel at you. So, here we are. If you're watching this and you're not in our live audience, I love saying that, the live audience.
Live audience.
As opposed to having a dead audience or something. So, if you're not watching this in real time, then you're watching us on YouTube. And if you are, let me encourage you, nay, implore you, perhaps even whine and wheedle at you to hit that subscribe button down there and also hit the like button because we like to be liked. Or if you hated us, hit the hate button.
Thumbs down.
Yeah. I mean, it's all feedback and we appreciate all feedback. And speaking of feedback, we would love it if you made a comment. We try and answer every single comment. So if you have a question about this talk or any other talk, or if you just want to say, hi, we really liked your talk, or hi, we really hated your talk, then feel free. The only comments that will not be getting through are the usual trolling stuff, which I ignore.
And the spam.
And the spam.
Spam.
Yes.
Yeah.
No spam.
Nope.
So, anyway, we would love for you to subscribe, and you will find down below in the description, down there, somewhere down here,
somewhere down there,
various links. We encourage you to join our mailing list. We promise not to send out huge numbers of things, usually one thing a week. But then you will get an invite to join us live on our talks, which we would love to have you do. We can handle up to 100 people on these talks, and we've gotten nowhere near that many so far. And you'll also see a place where if you appreciate us and what we're doing, you are invited to make a donation, because that's how we support ourselves. Most of what we do not charge a set fee for, or any fee at all. But if you can afford to drop a few coins in the poor box, we would be forever grateful and remember you in our prayers.
Indeed, we would. Alms. Yes.
So there we have it. Oh, yes. And if you find that we are just the grooviest thing since sliced bread, we do private consultations, which you can book with us. An hour will cost you only $100. And we will talk with you about whatever interesting thing you want to talk about.
And that's with me or Mushtaq. We
Yes.
both have our particular strong suits, but we both work as a team and individually to support you in getting further along on your spiritual development path.
Okay.
Yep.
So much for the commercials. Thank God.
Thank God.
What next?
Well, there's Omar.
Yeah.
Tonight, we are going to be talking about some overlapping concepts of a sort between Zen practice and Sufi practice. And two of the core concepts we want to cover are Kensho and Satori. So why don't you get us started? I know you have some real things you want to just hone in on tonight, Mushtaq.
Okay. So these terms, Kensho and Satori, are the Japanese terms for Chinese concepts that they got from the Sanskrit. The way that it happened was that these Buddhist guys came over from India. Y'all know about Bodhidharma and the Shaolin Temple and all of that. And they brought some stuff with them. And the Chinese took it and made it their own and grafted it into the Taoist tradition, basically, for their own understanding. And they have their words for it. The Sanskrit has its words for it. The Chinese has its words for it. And it all kind of means the same. I spent a lot of time this week double and triple checking to make sure that no concepts got lost in the mix. And it doesn't seem to be. So, Kensho is usually defined as, okay, both of these terms are sometimes used synonymously, Kensho and Satori, though I don't think they should be. Kensho is usually described as an initial awakening to the reality of yourself. Satori is sometimes referred to in the same way, but it's often a deeper situation. And neither of them are actually enlightenment, whatever that is, because they're not. Let me give you a metaphor. And the background is to help you with the metaphor tonight. So you are out in the Southwest, somewhere in, say, New Mexico, because who wouldn't want to be? And it's dark and you can't see anything. But as you know, in certain times of the year in New Mexico, you get lightning storms. So you're out there and there's a flash of lightning and it illuminates the entire surroundings. And you go, wow, that's Kensho. That flash of illumination where you get to see the real for that moment is Kensho. So the lightning storm goes on and you get more of these flashes. And every time you do, you see what is there. And you see it more and more clearly. And every time that happens, you go, wow. And then at a certain moment, with a flash, you have seen enough of the landscape that is there that you begin to understand it. And you go, oh, that's Satori. Satori is that moment of really having a deep, visceral understanding of the landscape of the present moment. Kensho is just a flash, a moment of illumination, literally a moment of illumination. The dark land in front of you gets that flash and you see a bit of it. And more than that, it's when you know that that's what you're seeing. You get that moment of illumination for nanoseconds at a time, from time to time. I mean, y'all know the trick, right? I ask you, are you awake or asleep? And you check inside and you go, oh, I'm awake. That's a flash of Kensho, but you don't realize it until you stop for a moment and examine that awake state and go, here I am. And you allow everything to be as it already is. Again, I'm stealing that from Adyashanti, who I have never heard it expressed more clearly than that. So I just plagiarize his words. And so the moment of Kensho can happen at any time. That moment of awakening to the essence of yourself, to the essence of reality, to being aware of the drishti is the Sanskrit word, and it means the seer, to see. And that is the first of two Sanskrit words that make up Kensho. And it's the idea of seeing, of being the witness. And when you are the witness to reality, for that moment when you wake up and you have momentarily disconnected from the conditioned self, and you see what is as it is, then you have it. Nothing special. Does that make sense so far? Am I completely talking out of my ass?
Peilan, why don't you share your thoughts?
The first idea that came to mind was it's clear as mud, but it's I won't say that I'm far enough along to really understand all of the subtleties. What I probably can say is that those little moments where you realize you're just kind of looking at the world as if you're not part of it for that just brief moment. That's what pops into my head when Mishtak mentions Kensho.
Thanks, Peilan. Yeah, so what are your thoughts on that Mishtak about being the seer? Is it, I mean, I guess it could be kind of like an out-of-body experience.
But it's not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So say more about that, if you would.
Okay, I'm going to do the thing that I always do at this point, and I'm going to quote the Yoga Sutras.
Yep.
First pada, first 4 lines, which are, this is the teaching of yoga. Yoga means integration. This is the teaching of integration. Integration is the cessation of the twistings and turnings and churnings of the monkey mind. When the monkey mind becomes still, then the witness is in its proper place as the seer of that which is given to it. At all other times, the witness is identified with the objects given to it. So this is a matter of disidentifying with the objects. You don't give up the objects. You don't give up anything. You give up your identification with it. You lose for a moment the is of identity. So Peilan switches from I am a programmer to sometimes I do programming. I witness myself doing programming. The programming still happens, but it's a change in perspective.
Yeah, so thank you for bringing that up, Peilan. Is it all right if I follow up with Aaron's question?
Please do.
Yeah, so Aaron asks, are the terms used interchangeably by native speakers?
Frequently, at least in Japanese. Now, the terms in Chinese, they call Satori Wu. And Peilan, can you remember the words for Kensho in Chinese?
I believe that the ones you showed me were 见性.
Yes.
Yep.
And they have slightly different meanings. So, Peilan, what are the different meanings?
见性, so Kensho, 见 is to see. So the metaphor that you had used, which is that flash of lightning that illuminates, that is a very, very apt metaphor. So 见性, it's really just to see the nature of things. Versus 悟is more of a, I'm going to steal the word integration for a moment, where it's like you can understand. It's no longer just seeing it, but it's understanding and believing and almost like integrating that understanding with yourself.
And that's a perfect definition of what we're talking about. Thank you.
Good question, Erin. Thanks. All right. Are they verbs or adjectives? I think is what's being asked. I think they're.
I think that they are usually classified as abstract nouns.
Yeah.
I know Satori is an abstract noun that comes from Satoru. That's the verb. And that's a problem because the thing about abstract nouns is there aren't any, really. Abstract nouns are verbs that somebody did some BDSM on.
Is that like a, objectification, in the most,
Exactly right.
yeah. In the most literal sense.
Yes.
Yeah.
So what do you think, Noor? You're smart. You know these things. You do all the talking.
Yeah. Well, I guess what comes to my mind as you were describing Palon as I am a programmer versus I sometimes do programming was, my relationship to gender has been very interesting in that I think one of my awakening experiences involves kind of a crash collision with what it means to identify with gender. So for me, it's kind of like I understand that I am often falling into the habitual trap of saying, I am a woman, I am female, things like that. But it's more that I do female, I do woman. And that's been kind of interesting to grapple with because I think that it's something that maybe up until a certain point of my spiritual path, I took for granted, but then once I didn't, it was very much a shakeup for me. And sitting with that is kind of part of my unfolding Satori, as it were. I would say that, yeah. Because it helps me disidentify with all of those label eyes that we tend to get wrapped up in.
And that's a good segue into the idea of what is this enlightenment that they're talking about? Now, the thing is, as I always point out, in Sanskrit, Chinese, Japanese, the term enlightenment does not land anywhere. The term that you find that you talk about when we say the Buddha was enlightened, what we're doing is we're translating a Sanskrit term, which is Samyak Sambodhi. Bodhi comes from the root bod. Bud. Bud means to be awake. Sambodhi means fully awake. So, and Samyak Sambodhi means profoundly, permanently, fully awake. And what that means is that Siddhartha Gautama, according to the myths and legends, had completely disidentified himself with his conditioned being. The wise people say that what we call enlightenment is merely the experience of the unconditioned self. When you have that flash and see the terrain, that is a moment of seeing without conditioning. It is just that as it's given, versus that which you see with all of the lenses, blinders, and different colored glasses that you wear. Reality without presupposition. Now, this is not to say that you live without that, because that would be difficult. Certain presuppositions are useful. Like I presuppose, especially living where I do, that if I don't look all around me at every intersection, some fool is going to come and run me down with his car, because people around here drive like complete idiots. And if I did not have that presupposition, I would have to be surprised by that. So we don't give that stuff up. We just don't think that it's us. I am not my presuppositions. Presuppositions are useful heuristics. It's the difference between believing that the mask is you and realizing that you're wearing a mask. Or it's the difference between being in a play and being so deeply in it that you think you are the character that you're playing, versus realizing that you're playing a character.
Yep. Yeah. I often use the metaphor of masks because I feel that allows us kind of the imaginational space to think about switching masks, even to use them at will rather than being stuck with them.
And that's important. So here's the question. Now that we know that this might be a thing, what do we do? This is where we get to the Zen concepts from a Sufi viewpoint. Because the Zen guys will just hit you with a stick. Whack! Are you awake? No? Whack! We don't get to do that. The Sufis never got sticks issued. They ran out at Zen. So instead, we use trickery. We trick people into being awake. The Zen people call that koans usually. You all know about koans, right? These silly questions that teachers ask their students. Classic koan. Does a dog have Buddha nature? What does that even mean? Another classic one. Who is the Buddha that makes the grass green? Anybody have any favorite koans? Or unfavorite koans? Koans that have driven them crazy? If you give me a koan, I'll give you the answer.
I feel like this is where Dave would be jumping on that.
Yep.
Oh, here's one. Show me the face you had before you were born.
Okay, next question. There's your answer.
We have one from Aaron. What's the sound of one hand clapping? Yes,
The sound
that's a
of one hand
classic one.
clapping is clap. The sound of the other hand clapping is
Do you have one, Mushtaq? Do you have a favorite? I like the dog one.
Yeah, the dog one is near and dear to my heart. Because everybody knows that, I mean, so Joshu asked that question, great Zen dude. And Muhmin, who was his recorder wrote a poem which went, "Does a dog have Buddha nature? This is the most important question of all. If you answer either yes or no, you lose your own Buddha nature." And of course, when Joshu was asked that question, his answer was moo, and then he took his sandals, put them on his head, and walked out of the room. Moo is a negation that doesn't mean no in Japanese. And as much as you try and figure it out, you just won't. I should state, though, that I'm not a Zen guy, so I may have gotten the names backwards or sideways. But the story I got right. Even if you heard the story differently, my version is the correct one. So, should you want to experience some Kensho, how do you go about doing it? If you're a Zen guy, you get asked koans and you sit in zazen for hours and hours until your legs fall asleep and your toes turn blue. And then some dude in a robe comes by and hits you behind the head with a stick. And then you go and you give the answer to the teacher on the koan that you were meditating on, and then he hits you with a stick. Rinse, repeat. Like I said, Sufis were never issued sticks, so we have come up with other ways. What is the first trick into getting to somebody to experience Kensho, Noor?
So we did mention asking that core question.
Yes.
Right. And we each have one. For Mushtaq, his is, am I awake? That works for him. For me, it tends to be more, who am I? That makes me start digging deeper and deeper and deeper into the layers to the point where, the answer is unspoken. And that's often what triggers my Kensho moments.
Yes. So finding the right question, and at this point, somewhere up here, or maybe at the end of the talk, I will put a link to a talk that we did a couple of years ago on the right question. That is a definite way to start cultivating those Kensho moments. What else?
What else, huh?
Yeah, what else? Tell us, Lady Noor.
I do find sitting meditation useful for me personally. I know that's not everyone's thing, but I do find that it allows me to slow way down and to let all of the machinations of the mind come to a standstill. Breath practice is a big part of that.
Yes.
Yep. And for anyone, whether they're doing sitting meditation or moving meditation, as we're always harping on about, breath practice is going to be the key to slowing down those machinations, those mechanizations rather. Yes.
Yep. Breath practice is the interface between the outer work and the inner work, actually. If you look at, again, at the Yoga Sutras, it sits right in the middle. In the sutras, you have the Eightfold Path, the 8 limbs of yoga. The Buddhists call it the Eightfold Path. But we have the 8 limbs. And those are yamas and niyamas. Those are the first 2. They are the disciplines and the inner and outer disciplines of the way. And so that involves things like nonviolence. Ahimsa is one of the niyamas or yamas. There's all sorts of them all over the place. They're basically having a strong inner and outer moral foundation. Then after that, you have sitting. Asana is the third one. Asana literally means to sit. It doesn't mean put your legs around your neck. It doesn't mean stand on your head. It doesn't mean fold your body into a square knot. It means sit. And what it is saying to you is learn to sit with your body calm. After that comes pranayama, breath practice. Breath practice leads to the next four things, which are withdrawal of the senses from their objects, concentration of awareness, what we call meditation, and then samadhi, which is entering a state of integrative flow. So breath practice is the interface between those outward things and the inward things. Without it, you don't get there.
It's the key to everything.
It is the key to everything. If you don't think it's the key to everything. So you all heard, a bunch of people came to Mullah Nasruddin Hoja, and they said, Mullah, you are a saint. So tell us, what is most important in life? Ahmed over here says it is reading the Quran daily. This other guy says it's giving alms. This person over here says it's fasting. Tell us, we want to know. You're a saint. Tell us, what is the most important thing? And the mullah looks at them and says, hold your breath. And then he just waits. That's the Zen style of a Zen koan.
The Sufi style of a Zen koan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Zen Sufi style. The Zen Sufis were actually a group in the Dune series. You had the Zen Sunnis and the Zen Sufis.
Mm.
Yeah, when you get me and my buddy Lawrence together, you get the Zen Sufis. And you better hide the good silverware.
Trouble. These two are going to be trouble.
We always were. All right, so we have this. We have this idea of the flashes of illumination, which, the first flash, you go, wow, what happened?
Mm-hmm.
As the flashes progress, your attention goes to them. Like imagine yourself out in that New Mexico desert at night, and you know that the lightning storm is still out there. And so you pay attention and you wait for the next lightning. Boom, and you see more because your attention is already focused on the landscape. And so every time that happens, you focus a bit more. Your attention is there. It's not narrowed down to like one rock out there. It's completely wide open to the entire landscape. And you try and take it all in every time you get the flash. But the more your attention is on that, the more you see. And the more you see, the closer you get to that moment of understanding. That aha moment. So the easiest way to explain this is Kensho is, wow. And Satori is, oh. Think of those two things. That is the single best explanation I know of. Palan's over there laughing at me. She has
It
to
works,
put up with
though.
this every week.
Yep. Good student, though.
Excellent student. Don't tell Paylan, though. It'll go to her. All right, so there we have it. And now we open the floor to questions. Ask us questions or give us answers. If you have answers, we will give you full and complete questions to go with them.
Ilmar, what's going on in your mind?
Mind is that. Yeah. Well, I mean, I like the lightning metaphor. I mean, that's very illuminating.
He went there.
It works. It works. Yes.
Yeah. One of the tools that I found helpful is a set of quote unquote English koans by a dude named Junpo. You can pick them up on mondozen.org, and it's, you know, and it seems to be a fairly effective way of helping people have presumably a Kensho experience. But you know, personally, I still find myself, not obviously, but I still find myself identified, I guess, in a sense, as a separate self, and I'm still tackling the whole issue of form and formless, to what, you know, because in some sense both of those are true. It seems to me, you know, that there's just one self, and yet there's also me as a particular, and that particular thing is almost works like a koan for me, and I'm still kind of working on that one, you know. But other than that, I have nothing particularly limiting to add to the discussion. You know, that's kind of where I'm at, sitting at the moment.
So I have to say that state where you realize that you are singular, you are the I yourself, and at the same time you realize the I is universal. That is the most interesting and fascinating state you can get into, as far as I'm concerned.
It's also a damn uncomfortable state at times. You know, it's hard. It's a hard one to settle. You know? At least for me, it is. You know, it seems like
tricky.
Yeah.
To be individual and universal at the same time is a tricky thing, and yet when you can pull it off, life gets very, very interesting.
Yeah.
And I don't think that any of us are in the state where we pull it off all the time.
Oh yeah. I mean, I've had some terrifying moments of that sensation of just, you know, this sense of what you're talking about. There's no real words to describe it, but it's intense sometimes. And I have found that intensity varies depending on how deep I might go into it or what else I'm sitting with, where I'm at otherwise in my grounded, you know, however grounded I am or not. So I think it's interesting that you mentioned that it can be challenging to sit with that, because yeah, it can be.
And yet that strikes, I mean, I agree with you. I mean, it seems like the core issue in a way, you know, it's, you know, emptiness is form is emptiness. And how the hell do you really dynamically hold that and live a life, you know?
Yeah. I mean, in some ways it's almost like, for me personally, it's like holding that lightly, like with a light touch. Yeah.
Except, you know me, I have a hard time holding things lightly.
Yeah.
That must upset your dance partners.
No, actually, no, them I do hold lightly. That's one of my things about tangling. Hold them lightly, because they slap me in the face if I try to
No bear hugs on the dance floor.
No, the first, now with pandemic, I don't have to worry about that.
Yeah. Yep. I feel that a light touch helps. So maybe that's something to just test out and see if that's doable. Yeah.
Yeah, and to
I-
realize that it's a field.
Mhm.
One pole is the universal, the other pole is individual, and the field exists between those two poles, and you want to encompass the whole field.
And sometimes I can dance in that field, and sometimes it feels like, where the fuck am I? How the hell do I handle this? Interesting.
Well, like I always say, if it was easy, everybody'd be doing it, rather than just us weirdos.
Well, thank you for sharing, Omar.
Okay.
Yeah. How about you, Mr. Keem? What are you thinking about? You don't want to be put on the spot? You got nothing? All right, that's fine.
Let's pick on Ramon.
Yeah, Ramon.
Ramon,
What's
talk
coming
to
up for
us.
you?
You don't have to throw your camera on, but give us the tones, the dulcet tones of your voice.
Hold on here. Give me a second.
Okay.
Yeah, my camera does work. Hey.
Oh my God, there you are.
Yay!
Yeah.
Oh, I haven't seen that face in forever. Hello.
Yeah, hey.
All right.
And you have obviously been working on your tan, man. I'm jealous.
I was just at the beach for like 3 hours, just hanging out in the sun, in the water. It was pretty great. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, my wife just said life ain't bad. Yeah. So what was the question exactly?
Oh, just like what have you been, what's come up for you over the course of our conversation tonight? Or what thoughts do you have or experiences do you have that you might like to share?
Yeah, what do you think? Are we full of shit or what?
Yeah. Well,
We are full of shit, I
I mean,
guess.
I've definitely had the experience multiple experiences of everything that's been talked about today. I've had Kensho experiences for sure. I'm certain, to the degree that I can be certain, that I've had at least some Satori experiences as well. For sure, I'd say a cone for me that I didn't recognize as one is what Umar said, of being able to kind of be in that space where we are universal and individual, and recognizing both as simultaneously true.
Mm.
And how I sort of like have that in the background a lot, but it's not something I ever feel like as if I can really hold, if that makes sense.
It makes total sense. If you try and hold it, it disappears.
Yeah. So for me, it's like something that I can always kind of, I know it's there. It's almost as if like it's a friend that's kind of always by, that I can kind of feel, but I don't ever try to really like grasp it. But it's definitely an interesting mystery, and for me, it sort of helps me tune out of thinking I know what's going on. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, so that's what popped up for me personally. Like that I can relate to some of the experiences that you've been talking about. And it seems like a lot of us sort of dealing with the same things,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks, Ramon. Thanks for sharing that.
Sure.
Aaron, I know you gotta type, but I want to hear from you too, if you're down. And my grandmother is here with us, so
Twice.
I'd love for us all to like wave to her. And I don't think she'll be able to speak with us tonight, which is unfortunate, but I'm glad that she's here. And I don't know if she feels like typing about any moment she might have had, but I'm certainly going to ask her about it later since she sat in with us and might have some thoughts. Mystikim says, I think sometimes I get my Kensho moment in the meeting here. That's awesome. I'm glad to hear that. That's great. I mean, if this is a space that facilitates those moments for you, that is perfectly good and certainly makes me feel good to hear.
Yeah, it means we're actually doing our job, earning our keep.
Yeah. So Aaron says, I like the lightning analogy. It makes me think that it's something you can count on as long as your eyes are open, so to speak. Yes. And he put as your eyes are open, because yeah, it may not be a visual metaphor, may not be what it feels like for everyone, but I do think it's a good start. Yes. Thanks, Aaron. Nancy, how about you?
Well, there's one thing that's occurring to me with this that seems like it's a partial truth for it, which is that part of getting at Kensho and Satori would be no longer being afraid of people.
Say more about that if you feel up for it.
Yeah, well, it first occurred to me when you were talking about gender stuff. Because one of the things that people get frantic about is convincing other people that gender is extremely important and you have to get it right. And so if you're no longer being affected by other people's fear on this, then that would make a big difference.
That's definitely the case.
And then this thing about realizing that in some sense, everybody's the same person, which is not an experience I've had, but this would be presumably contributing to not being afraid of them.
Definitely could be, yeah. Yep.
And that's as far as I've gotten with this.
Well, I think those are some really interesting insights, and thank you for sharing, Nancy.
Welcome.
Yeah. All right, Mustakim says, any caution on trying to look for the Kensho or Satori moment, like not to be attached to them?
Yeah, don't look for them.
Yeah, I'm in my experience, they kind of sneak up on you.
Yeah. You have some cats. You know how when you look for your cats, you can't find them? It's exactly like that. So what you need to do is metaphorically rattle the cat food bag, you know, or do the sound of the can opener or whatever that they associate with that. Then they come running.
Yeah, and I think a good corollary for that would be breath practice.
Yes.
Stillness, making space for these things to happen.
Breath practice is the can opener that opens the cat food can of awakening.
Oh my God. I love that though. That works. That was good.
No, I haven't been drinking.
Yeah, go for it, Palin.
You guys, I believe, mentioned this in a separate video, which I have not watched yet.
Gasp.
Tisk, tisk.
And so then the question that I'm wondering is, as a person goes down this journey, how does, in so much that you can like speak about it here for this video, how do they know that those Kensho or Satori moments are real, I guess, as opposed to some other form of delusion?
The biggest answer is that they do not refer to anything other than themselves. There is never a this, then that.
Say more about that. I want to make sure I follow.
If you have a Kensho experience, you don't go, well, some people do, and then they lose it. If you go, I have had this awakening experience, therefore I'm enlightened. that ain't it.
Yeah. Yeah.
It doesn't refer to anything at all other than the experience itself. And that's the biggest thing. Also, you don't spend any time thinking about, gee, I just had this experience. I wish I could have another one. Because if you do that, you're completely lost.
Mhm.
But if you have a Kensho experience and you go, oh my God, I must be the Buddha. I am now the enlightened one. And people should come and sit at my feet while I expound to them the realities of the universe, then you're nuts.
All right. So, does that answer the question, Palin? Good. Great. So, Aaron has a thought, and then I noticed that Ilmar is unmuted. Aaron says, I think of them as something that doesn't exist without context. The quote, of a sudden, unquote, component is a bit of an illusion.
Likely so, because one thing that you learn over a while is that state is always there.
Mm.
It's you who's not there. If that makes sense. I mean, I understand that, but maybe nobody else does because words.
Aaron says, yep. So I think he's with you on that. Thanks, Aaron. Ilmar, did you have something you wanted to share?
That's for sure, but I guess I have a question.
Yeah.
It's sort of, I mean, I certainly get the trap of wanting to recreate a particular experience, right? Because then it's me wanting to have this object as an. On the other hand, there's also presumably the question of how do you, what's the bait? What keeps the fish on the line? It's got to be, it seems to me, some, and sometimes these Kensho experiences or experiences like that are what keeps us interested in the process, you know. And so I'm wondering, you know, whether that's not one of the services they provide, and if not them, then we need some other thing that acts as bait to keep the self, the persona online on this quest.
Yeah, and you make a good point because you pretty much have to trick the persona into waking up.
Yeah.
Because why would you want to? One of my favorite quotes from somebody or other is, if you have a choice between getting $1 million and becoming enlightenment, take the $1 million, because then you'll have the money and there will be somebody there to spend it. I forget who said that, but somebody besides me said that, but I'm stealing it.
Sounds like one of yours, actually, but
It does sound like one of mine, but I can't actually in good conscience lay claim to it.
So what do you find as being the best kind of bait?
That's different for each person. The best kind of bait for me, as I had been going along this path, was the experience that at some point there would be a kind of awakening that would be different than everything else. And of course, when it comes around, then you realize, oh, it's not any different than anything else. It's the damn chop wood and carry water thing, or chop water and carry wood in my case. But
that's very common. This, I mean, I think a lot of us have had this. We're inspired by this thought of, well, there'll be this big flash bang and the skies will open and we'll get this great aha experience. I mean, that's historically, I think, has been the main bait for many people, you know,
yeah,
including us. And so there's a sense in which illusion serves a purpose, right? Not just a practice.
Illusion serves a purpose for the illusion. Every enlightened guy I know says, if people realized what true awakening was, nobody would bother. People
That's
don't want that.
Yeah, and even if you tell people, once you get there, it's no big deal. It's like they don't believe you. They want it to be the shiny thing.
Yeah, because I just invested 50 years, whatever hell must my mind. The last thing I want is for it to be a rotten penny or something.
Well, I mean, that's part of the idea, is that, everyone talks about like, oh, the journey is the destination, blah, blah, blah. But I mean,
But they all want the brass ring.
yeah.
That pretty much ages me. Do y'all understand what I say besides Ilmar, who will know? The rest of you understand what the brass ring is?
Tell us.
Okay,
Tell
so
us, oh old one.
when I was a kid, you would go on a merry-go-round, and there would be a box that would have a brass ring sitting up. And if you could reach out and grab that brass ring off there and catch it, you would get another ride on the merry-go-round.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Huh.
The number of kids that fell off their horse trying to go for that ring, they put it just out of reach. I mean, I had spent time literally hanging sideways trying to get it myself.
So literally going for the shiny thing.
Going for the shiny thing, yes.
Yep.
But no, to your point, Noor, the journey is whatever the hell you were saying. I mean, whatever.
Yeah, I mean, it's a cliche at this point. The journey is the destination and all that stuff. But yeah.
But then again, the journey ain't so pleasant sometimes. So
No.
so the journey by itself often isn't really sufficiently motivating, is it?
Depends on the makeup of the traveler.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. I mean, some of us are gluttons for punishment. So
Well, but then we'll just go to a BDSM's parlor. I mean, what the hell do you need to hang around with stuff for?
Yeah, I mean, it does depend on the individual. I think some people find it somewhat easy, actually, in that perhaps they don't get wrapped up in the perceived drama of the journey or whatever. And for them, they might be less likely to get caught up in the traps that you or I might be getting caught up in here and there.
Yeah, one of the things that I like to use is the concept of ananda. In Sanskrit, ananda is a very important word. You hear it in Sat Chit Ananda, which is like the three aspects of being. And ananda is usually translated into English as bliss. And bliss is, it's an interesting thing. That's like, I remember back in the 60s, bliss was like, oh, you mean like we're going to be stoned all the time? We're going to be high the whole time? And people were like all down with that. Let's be high all the time. And I remember the day that I realized what ananda actually was. And ananda is not bliss. Ananda is contentment.
Yes.
And when you say to somebody, what you get at the end is contentment, they go, wait, I want the bliss. I want to get high. And contentment, contentment is just not enough for people. But contentment is, in some ways, I think, the highest state of being you can be in. Just being, As Adya says, allowing everything to be as it already is. You do that and you enter into the state of ananda.
Is it a state though that's motivating when you're not there? I mean,
no, you got to trick people in there. It's like, look, shiny thing. They go up and finally they go, oh, I don't need the shiny thing. Contentment.
And I guess my where I'm headed with this at the moment, and this is tentative, maybe it's not so much a shiny thing or a stick or a carrot. I wonder whether there isn't really kind of an innate drive, which is almost similar to hunger or to cold, wanting warmth and so forth. There's innate drive in this direction.
I don't know that it's a universally innate drive. That's the thing. I think that there is an innate drive in some of us. Some people are impelled to it.
Yeah.
You know, my old buddy Jed used to say, I realized that I wanted the truth at any cost. And one of his metaphors was the tale of Moby Dick, that ultimate obsession that Ahab had with the whale is the obsession that you need to have the drive to awakening for him. I always thought that was lame because I don't care about the whale. The whale can do its thing. It's no big deal to me. But for somebody like him, whose question was, what is the truth? You know,
It really is his
Yeah.
whale.
it
Yeah.
really is his whale. The truth is his whale. And it drove him to the point where he found the truth and went, oh shit, is that it?
Yep.
Yeah.
I think part of the power of our core question is that it kind of urges us on in that way.
And it's probably some combination of all the above. I mean, some core drive and a lot of shiny objects.
And it's something that most people don't want.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
definitely.
it's something that
Definitely not.
most people who say that they want it don't want it. This is my experience after 4 decades of teaching, is that most of the people who come saying, I want to know the truth, just want the shiny thing, or they want the black belt. That's another one of my metaphors is in martial arts, you get people who come to your studio because they want to earn the black belt, not because they want to learn the things that are being taught there. They want to have the object that says that they know rather than the knowledge. And the students who would rather have the knowledge than the belt are rare as hen's teeth, and you need to cultivate them. That's like Palin. Palin, don't let this go to your head, but Palin is completely unmotivated by the idea of getting a belt. It means, as far as I can tell, nothing to her. But she is one of the most diligent students of Bagua Zhang I have ever had in my entire life. If I had 10 students like her, I would rule the world right now. Like I said, don't even listen to that, Palin.
She has left the room. We can gossip about her again.
Is it lack of motivation usually, or is it some kind of an underlying fear of what might show up?
I think that it's motivation towards an illusionary object rather than lack of motivation.
And that can be any kind of thing. I mean, we all have our own illusions that we love and get very deeply attached to.
Yeah, look at, for instance, all of the crazy people who are out there right now insisting that Donald Trump was ripped off from the election and there's this widespread voter fraud and all of this kind of stuff. And they have built an entire fantasy world around that, and a very dangerous one. Fantasy worlds are inherently dangerous. Truth is dangerous in a different way. But if you mess with people's fantasies, they'll kill you.
And Aaron's using the word insanity, and yeah, it's
Yeah.
kind of a socially sanctioned insanity to be completely driven by the attachment to illusions like that. And of course, we're burgeoning into not socially acceptable with Donald Trump fans and all that stuff. But there are everyday things that we do in a similar fashion that are equally weird, but socially acceptable.
Yeah, like wearing hats. One of the weirdest things that human beings do is to put funny shaped objects on their heads. If you look at the history of hats, you will see the history of mass insanity in the human population.
Hey, they're just slippers on top of people's heads.
I would never want to have a foot shaped like some of them.
All right. Aaron says, it's especially obvious when you look at the first hats. Oh, yeah.
Yep.
What is that even supposed to do? He says.
Yeah.
I haven't seen them, but now I need to go research. So
Yeah,
this should be
there are
fun.
some hats you just look at them and go, what were they thinking? It's not going to keep the sun off. It's not going to keep the rain off. And remember, during times in Europe, you knew who a person was by the hat that they wore.
Mm.
So there we have it. Any more last questions? First questions?
Actually, could you expand a little more on what you mean by an abstract noun?
An abstract noun is when you take a verb and turn it into a thing. So love is an abstract noun. Love is actually not a noun at all. Love is a behavior, and a behavior is an action. Therefore, love is a verb, and it does not pass the test of being a noun. You all know what the tests for nouns and verbs are, right?
No.
This is called the Wheelbarrow Test.
Mhm.
The first
yeah.
part is, can you fit it in a wheelbarrow? So you cannot fit love in a wheelbarrow.
Mhm.
You can fit any object in a wheelbarrow. You can fit an elephant in a wheelbarrow, right? I mean, he's up there on his little toes, standing there in the wheelbarrow and everything. So you can do that, but you can't fit love in a wheelbarrow. But love fits correctly and properly in the sentence "and ongoing blank." So doesn't fit in a wheelbarrow, and you can say "an ongoing love," and everybody understands it. That means it's actually a verb. But we call it in English an abstract noun because it doesn't actually refer to a real object.
Mhm.
This is one of the really crazy things about our language, is that we can do this. So everybody's assignment this week is to figure out what you can and can't actually fit in a wheelbarrow. Can't fit happiness in a wheelbarrow. You can't fit a relationship in a wheelbarrow. You can't fit time in a wheelbarrow. All of a sudden you realize a lot of the things that you thought were things are not things. They are ongoing processes.
You can't fit death in a wheelbarrow.
No.
Nope.
And Ramon said something important here.
Yes, Ramon said, I forgot to add that the breath is a critical major practice for me as well. Yes, and
Damn
I'm
right.
not surprised to hear that. Yeah.
We are those that breathe, as opposed to those who don't breathe.
Yep.
They are the enemy, those that don't breathe. Zombies? You can fit a zombie in a wheelbarrow. All righty. So I think that we have done enough damage for one night.
Damage. All right.
And we should probably wrap this up so that people can go home, go to bed. Well, actually, everybody's probably already home. Do what it is that you're going to do, because I know some of you are in weird and different places and times are different.
Yeah, so one last thought from Ramon, which I think is cool to share. He says, I have on good authority that in Yoruba, there is no word for thing, that there are only processes and forces. Interesting thought.
That makes sense. Another language that you find this to be pretty much the case. There are words for things, but they all start out as verbs, are the Semitic languages. Hebrew, Arabic, Aramaic, all start out with 3-letter verbs from which you create all the rest of the language. And that's fairly brilliant.
Yeah. So there we are. We should probably wrap up for the evening, as you were
Yeah,
saying.
let's switch over to gallery view so everybody can see everybody. And all right, say goodbye.
Weaving.
Goodbye,
Bye.
folks. So long. Yay.